Seatbelt.
Michael Schwartz.
Megan.
Hello, I'm so happy to have you. We have known each other since our days at USC, and you have evolved in the last 20 years, and it's been incredible to watch. We have a filmmaker, a showman, a creator, a writer, a lifelong vegetarian.
Definitely that too.
As somebody who connects communities and people. And throughout the years I've known you, you've been somebody who has continually brought people together. And that's been incredible to witness. So we have a lot to talk about today. And the first question I wanted to ask you, Michael, is why do you create?
Why do I create? Because it's a compulsion is the first thing that comes to mind. I've always been someone who creates. It's sort of in my DNA. It's in my blood. I don't know otherwise. And I think it's ultimately a processing mechanism. I think it's a way to investigate, interrogate, and understand the world by acts of creation. So yes, it's my default at this point, but if I sort of think about it for a moment, I think I create to make sense of the world around me.
And what are you trying to make sense of right now?
Oh gosh. Right now, I think I'm trying to make sense of how optimism prevails. If I'm to look at that further and sort of look at the projects that I've made this year, which sort of, continue on my wavelength of genre and comedy. But my hope is that my work can always both entertain and challenge. It's the job of artists, I think. And so I'm curious about optimism right now, because there have been times this past year where I think I've lost my sense of optimism. And I think it's one of my core qualities. So I don't want to lose it.
And do you mind me asking why you've lost your optimism, you feel?
Yeah, I think it's world events. I think it's society. I don't want to be hyperbolic and say societal collapse, but, a lot of things are, especially here in the States, but certainly around the world, feel like immensely troubled times. At the same time, I think it's important to step outside of that. We, for thousands of years, have had remarkably difficult, remarkable times where everything feels like it's lost or we're on the precipice of enormous change. So there are elements that are unique about the times we're in, especially given technology and AI. But I think our political environment, I think social media discourse, I think our reliance on technology, our seemingly collective forgetting of each other's humanity, that sometimes leads me to moments of despair. And it is up to the acts of creation, to bring it full circle. It is up to the dialogue and the art that I make and interact with and consume that lead me to senses of optimism.
I don't want to get too far into technology, but I am curious about how you use technology in your creation, and if you feel like, does it take away or does it add to what you're creating, especially the process of creating? Because I think I'm curious, especially with the process, as somebody who creates in lots of different ways, how has it changed your process, or has it?
Yeah. Yes. We could talk for hours on this point. I'm a humanist first and foremost, but in many ways, I'm also a technologist and have worked in tech for the last 15 years. I'm not anti-tech. And I do think tech can create tools to better life and bring efficiency to a lot of processes. I get concerned when we rely on that technology, and in particular, artificial intelligence, which is steeped in stealing the ideas and creativity of humans without proper attribution or compensation. That's when things get murky for me. Certainly I use technology when I make films. For the first time this year, I used ChatGPT a little bit in terms of my research, because growing up, I had an Encyclopedia Britannica, right? And I could, look around the internet, and I always vet and double check information that I get online. But for instance, this series that I'm doing right now is set in the wellness industry. It's a comedic thriller satire on the wellness industry. And I worked in the wellness industry for many years in New York. And so I know the ins and outs of it, but I wanted some help in researching actual medical protocols and sort of scientific elements of the wellness industry. And so fortunately, my husband is an internal medicine doctor. And so I would sort of use ChatGPT to sort of interrogate some ideas. And then I would run everything by him to make sure that I was being medically accurate. And so it's the first time I've engaged in AI in that way. I'm obviously not using AI to write the script for me. I'm not using it to generate ideas. It is more so at this point for me a research tool. And my hope is that it's a slippery slope, that we don't become so complacent. I always go back to the visual of WALL-E, of all of us in those like inner tubes with our, big gulps and hamburgers. But you know what? People, when the remote control came out with the television, people thought, oh, people are never going to get up from their couch again. So we've had versions of this before, right? And I think it's up to us to be super intentional and to demand it of corporations, just like the writers and the actors who were on the front lines protesting last year around AI use in the film industry. We have to hold these companies accountable and ensure that, we're not all losing our jobs as a result.
Yeah, exactly. Because the bottom line can't be just I always ask the question of why are we here? And for me, if it's not to create, I don't know what is. Why we are here, but if I think I saw this meme somewhere that is why can't AI take over all the things that we don't want to do?
Yeah. Toilet cleaning,
right? And you never feel tempted to use it for creation, that it's I feel like it's always kind of tapping me on the shoulder, you can just use me, just use me if you want to write this script or if you want to whatever.
It is a temptation. I think, look, we'll see what happens. It's going to happen quick. So we'll see what happens in the next 3 to 5 years. But at this point, a human touch is visible, not to all, but to some, hopefully most. And I'm in the business of humanity. So I'm holding myself accountable to stick to my humanity.
God bless you. We need people who have those values. I want to get into the 4 questions you ask yourself before you take on a new project, because I absolutely love this. And I feel like everybody should have this kind of
framework.
Yeah, a framework for themselves. So do you want me to go through them, or do you know them by heart? Do you want me to?
No, by all means.
Okay, great. So the first one is, and I love this, you have to have an immediate visceral reaction to the story, the characters, or the talent involved. So what is a visceral reaction to you? And give us examples of like.
Yeah. So the two genres I work in the most are horror thriller genre and comedy. And when I'm lucky, they're combined. And to me, those two genres elicit visceral reactions. When you are in an audience, whether at the theater or at a movie theater, you gasp, you scream, your heart rate accelerates when you are encountering horror or thriller. And when you laugh at a comedy, you're getting that belly laugh, you're feeling that visceral reaction. And I think it's my observation that people listen to their own visceral reactions, their own bodily reactions, more so than they do their emotions or their own mind. So it's a bit of a trick. It's almost as if I incite a reaction in you physically first, my guess is you will question why you had that reaction. Why did you gasp out of fear? Why did you laugh because something was funny? And then you will interrogate the thoughts and the feelings, as opposed to me saying, this is what my story is. Aren't you feeling something? I'm instead leading with the visceral reactions. And so I do love producing visceral reactions in an audience. I think it's fun. I think it also like is engaging. Mm-hmm. I love being in a movie or in a theater where collectively the whole audience leans forward. Right? It's kind of
experienced that. Have you been there? And yeah,
it's magic. I mean, I was at a screening of my film Strangers on a Beach a couple nights ago, and there was a moment, and you know, every audience is so different, but there was a moment where a bunch of people gasped and screamed, and some woman like a few rows down was like, Jesus Christ. It was like really funny to me. It was funny to see also in different environments, right? All audiences are different. Every mix of an audience is different. And it's the only time you get that. Even in a movie theater, you will never be with that exact same audience ever again. So it's like a litmus test for me. It's fun.
And it's also when you take on new projects, right? So it's because you produce and you know, so what is that process like? You know, you like to evoke the visceral reactions to people, but you also have to have that feeling before taking on a new project.
Yeah. Great question. So for me, am I having a visceral reaction myself when I think of an idea, when I start writing a story? Meaning, does it scare me? Does it terrify me? For better or for worse, I tend to lean into things that scare me because and I think a lot of horror filmmakers probably would say the same thing. If it's scaring them, it'll probably scare other people.
And you mean like scaring, not like you're scared of putting this out into the world because of what people think. It's more like you're literally scared like at night.
Yeah, it's existential fear. I mean, the idea of Snatched, which is a funny story how that was created, in that I basically had 24 hours to come up with a pitch. And because so many of my stories are inspired by news items or in dialogue with the culture or society in real time, I turned on the news that day and saw Bob Chapek, who was then head of Disney, talking about how much he cared about his LGBT employees at Disney while actively supporting legislation that would harm them. And I couldn't stop kind of laughing at the hypocrisy of it, and saw that happening in a lot of different places. And so I said to myself, what if a kid comes out as gay in a horror movie, but the horror is that the parents are over enthusiastic about it? So he wakes up the next morning, mom's wearing a I love my gay son t-shirt, dad's wearing white cutoff shorts, singing Lady Gaga. And I like started laughing at the absurdity of it, which made me know that, okay, there's something funny there. But it also terrified me because it was about what they would, what actions people would take to sort of promote a false allyship, and how that sort of performative allyship can often be harmful and even dangerous. Which, as someone who grew up in liberal San Francisco, and by setting this story in San Francisco, I could sort of satirize and poke fun of my hometown with so much love. And at the same time, sort of interrogate that genuine fear I was having, which was, sort of where this discourse was heading, and how people's lives were at stake as a result. So that is an example of me coming up with an idea, sourcing inspiration from the world, and then feeling a visceral reaction. I'm laughing, I'm scared. There's something here for me to keep going with.
Now, I want to actually show the trailer for Snatched, but before I do that, why did you have 24 hours for a pitch?
This has happened to me 3 times in the last year, which is wild, but I love a deadline. So I'm actually good with a tight deadline because there's no time for second guessing. There's no time for that critical eye. You just go on impulse, which I like. I had seen that Disney and the studio were taking these short films to different film festivals and we're putting together this slate of programming. And so I reached out to them on Instagram. I guess I could tell this story a couple of years later. Who cares?
You've never told this story before?
No.
Oh, cool.
Exclusive. No, and it's probably not great that I tell it, but whatever. Just in that I reached out to them via a DM and just said, would you take a blind pitch?
Yeah.
I've never done that before. I don't have the chutzpah to do something like that. But it was the middle of the pandemic. I was not working. I was scared. And so I was activated to say, what can I do? And I DM'd them and someone responded 5 minutes later. Never in a million years thought that would happen. And they said, yeah, pitch us tomorrow. And so I said, okay. And I was like, what am I going to pitch? And I had certainly a bunch of ideas in my back pocket, all the different ideas, but I was like, I want something fresh. I want something new. And so I turned on the news, got inspired by that story, wrote it that night, and pitched it the next day. And then I got the green light 3 weeks later. We were in production 3 weeks after that, and then it was on Hulu a month after that. I mean, it was the quickest turnaround from ideation to delivery and streaming that I've ever had.
But see, that's an incredible story. And I think it's really inspiring for people to hear, for other creatives to understand that kind of like fairy tale can happen, even if, and maybe you don't want to say it because maybe for the Disney's sake, they're like, oh God.
Yeah, I don't want them to get inundated with DMs. I guess I'm being protective, but
right.
I guess the moral of it is if there's something that interests you, go after it however you can. I'm not bothering anyone by shooting a deep. They can ignore it, right? But for many years, I did not do things like that because I'm inherently a people pleaser and I don't want to, be annoying. And it was a good lesson for me that if you see an opportunity, you go after it.
No, and I remember stories. Look, I mean, that's dropping into the DMs. I think there's a story of, there's sort of plenty of famous actors who, I think it was even
Simu Liu with Shang-Chi, the Disney Marvel film. He tweeted, I want to play this role. And he played that role. He got the part.
And I think there was even like Harrison Ford who, I don't know, there's stories of like,
Totally.
People who they show up at the casting office with their headshot, or that was how you did it back in the day. And here it's like you drop into the DM or you call, people would like call directly to because I worked in casting, for 5 years in LA, and there would and I think you could usually tell the difference between. I think genuinely a lot of people in LA do want to help other people. There are, of course, tons of jaded people who are just like, whatever. But you can kind of feel when somebody's authentic and genuine, and you're like, oh, there's a little something spark that's a little bit different. You're like, let's give them a chance, because on the other side, like people in Hollywood, they never want to miss out on something.
Well, I was just going to say, Megan, it's also a reframe of this isn't give me an opportunity, please give me an opportunity. It is, I have something to offer. Do you want to get on board?
Yes.
And that reframe is crucial because it's trusting and knowing your work, that it can speak for itself, and that, hey, I've got something to offer. Even if the story wasn't created yet, my point of view is unique and worth listening to,
Yeah, it is. On that note, let's see the teaser.
I say that for anyone, I don't mean just me. I think everyone.
No, but you are. And actually, I know that you say that on your, I think I read that somewhere about you, that you really believe that each person is, you have your unique story. And if it comes from there, then that means innately it is unique. So
yeah, I agree.
Okay, let's watch this trailer. Here we go.
Cool.
Oh, Joey. Sweetie, what's wrong?
I think I'm gay.
It's late, sport. Let's talk about this in the morning.
No, you're hurting me, no! Ah!
Hey. I love that part at the end.
So cap.
And I think one of the things when I watched the short was, it's so interesting because not only I think you do something really unique, which is you incorporate horror and comedy, but also for both the project Strangers on the Beach and Snatched, there's a real tone, there's a real style to it, that really is like, ooh, it's sexy. If I may. I hate that word in some ways, but it's true. It's like you have this really, your projects, it seemed like you really put a lot of thought, and tell me if I'm wrong, into the aesthetic and the look and the feel and the tone of voice.
Yeah, it's interesting. That word tone comes up for me constantly, especially this year, because I love a slippery tone. And it's very hard to execute. And it's up to people if I execute it successfully or not. But the things that fascinate me most, the storytellers that fascinate me, I think of like Bong Joon-ho in Parasite, where we're in a familial domestic thriller and we're in a comedy and a satire and we're in a horror film, and it keeps you on your toes, which to me also keeps you having visceral reactions, to bring it back to that, because you're constantly not 2 steps ahead of the storytelling. We all get kind of bored, I think, when we know where the story is headed. And, we've all seen enough movies and plays and shows at this point that we're used to a formula, or an Aristotelian form of storytelling, if I may get so professorial for a moment, where we sort of know where how these stories are constructed. And I just saw a great movie, Twinless, at a film festival 2 weeks ago at Film Out, where Strangers was screening. And it was just a masterful tone where you just had no idea where the story was heading. And it was so exciting to me. So yes, I like playing. I love when you don't know if you're supposed to laugh or not. Now, someone might say, Michael, what are you doing? Like you want it to be a clear joke, or you want your audience to feel taken care of. And I do sometimes, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I want you to wonder why you're laughing. Or, you know what I mean? Because you start thinking about it. And I like giving that food for thought. And while Snatched and Strangers are very different aesthetically and tonally, they both sort of leave you thinking about what you just watched and maybe wanting to see it again with fresh eyes or wanting to talk to your neighbor about it. I don't want to make disposable stories. I don't want people to just forget. I want to keep the conversation going, because that's when I think, to go super big picture, that's where we as a society evolve. That's when we as individuals grow, is when we keep those conversations going. So I do love a slippery tone.
Slippery tone. I love that. And it actually made me think what, and I'm going to get into your next 3 questions, but as you're saying that, have you had a harsh review yet where it's made you like question, because I think having your own tone of voice can sometimes mean that people can be harsher on it. Maybe because, like you said, they don't understand that you're not supposed to laugh, or like you are supposed to laugh, you're not giving them all the punchlines directly. You're not spoon feeding it to them. So yeah, have you had that yet? And how was that?
Yeah. So the only example I can think of is I have a feature that's going out right now that I love called Pay Attention. And it is a sci-fi heist comedy, which... Amazing. And there's comps for it. I mean, like, if you remember Free Guy, the Ryan Reynolds movie a few years ago, where he's a non-playable character in a video game, and it's sort of action thrillery, but a comedy as well. I love this so much. And I had a friend read the script recently, and she's like, Michael, this is so great. I have no idea how you're going to execute this tone. And it's been really interesting for me because I think the answer to that is carefully. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
A screenplay is not meant to, you don't write a screenplay to be read. You write a screenplay to be executed on. And so my hope is that throughout the developmental process of this feature, with my collaborators and with my actors and with my producers and my DP, that we can be super intentional about, and the editor, probably most of all, how we cut the flow of this, how we take people on a journey with the story. And I think it's also about hopefully having the luxury to have a lot of different takes, on short indie films. I mean, Strangers, the whole last third of the film, we got one take because we shot it at, magic hour just after sunset. It was 20 minutes. We had one take, and that's the take you see in the film.
Oh, wow.
And I look forward to the day, particularly on projects that do have this oscillating tone, where we could get a few different, and you hear stories of directors doing this, getting a few different takes. This one's much broader. This one is much more serious. This one, go balls to the wall and be silly, whatever it is. And then that leaves you the good fortune of being able to edit the flow to your liking. So, I think it's just a constant conversation, and I think it's about ultimately listening. If nobody in the audience is laughing, then maybe that joke didn't land. And it's also about sort of trusting your gut. At the end of the day, I have to do things that make me laugh. I have to do things that scare me, because if it's not making me laugh, I'm not going to be able to make a funny film. Yeah.
You have so many things I want to touch on there, but let's go back to your questions. So, okay, the second question, so you have the visceral reaction, and the second one is, do I feel like I must tell this story? Like right now with these circumstances in this place, in this medium, with these people.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. Why now? I think why now is a super important question. I think our cultural norms and, what's hitting in the zeitgeist changes every day more rapidly than ever before. And it's been interesting to have stories develop over many years, because there are times when it feels like some of my stories are really hitting the zeitgeist. And then there are times when it's like, damn, this would have been really good 3 years ago. Maybe it'll loop back around. There's a popular notion that culture recycles every 20 years. So when you look at music, you look at fashion, right now we're back into late 90s, early aughts fashion with Gen Z, right? So if culture recycles every 20 years, sometimes you just got to wait around for something to hit again. So I think also because all of my stories are meant to engage with the culture in real time. I don't write World War II films. I don't write things that are not connecting to something happening in real time with the culture, for better or for worse, because it means things have to be sort of timely, executed in a timely fashion.
Do you think that could change, or do you feel like that is like that's just your passion is like, you're not interested in making a classic necessarily?
Yeah. It's a really interesting question, Megan, because a lot of timely things don't become classics or don't stay in the culture and here's the thing, there are ways Casablanca has stood the test of time. It was certainly of its era, but we can relate to wartime efforts. We can relate to romance, throughout history. So there are ways for things to certainly connect and stand the test of time. But as a sort of base platform for which I leap, I tend to be inspired by real news events and stories that are hitting me in real time.
It excites you. It excites you, like it, or it inspires you.
I think there's like a bit of a journalistic. I mean, you're a journalist. I'm not, but there's something about the sort of journalistic quality of storytelling that fascinates me, because it means you're interrogating something, and I do love art that interrogates.
Yeah. Okay. And then does the prospect of working on this project both challenge me and exhilarate me in equal measure? Is there an opportunity for everyone to learn, to make an impact, to feel heard, to feel rewarded? So that's kind of the third question. Yeah.
I mean, it's perhaps a masochistic quality to want to be challenged and exhilarated. But I think maybe it's a fear of not wanting to be bored. I think it's wanting, again, if I'm laughing, it can be funny. If I'm excited, the film can be exciting. So, and I want to learn new things. There are constantly new things to learn, new technologies, new ways of telling stories, new collaborators to work with. So my hope is that I can find that exhilaration, but that I can also be challenged enough so that I continuously evolve and grow. I don't want to ever be in stasis as an artist. I want to consistently evolve. So I think that's where that challenging comes from. And then the sort of, does everyone have the opportunity to feel seen and heard? I started rehearsals 2 days ago for this production of Guys and Dolls, which I'm directing at our alma mater, USC.
Yes. How does that feel?
It's surreal. I feel like we were just there yesterday, and it was 20 years ago. But the first thing I said to them is, we're a company. We are a company of actors and designers and stage management and technicians, and we all deserve opportunities to grow. It's not just about the actors. It's not just about it's not just about the leads. So I like coming into my projects as an active collaborator, and as someone who believes that the company, the ensemble is more valuable always than any individual.
And that goes into actually a fourth question, because the fourth question you ask yourself before doing a new project is, does the project share the mic with underrepresented voices? Is there space for social impact, inclusivity, all that stuff? What does that mean to you exactly?
Yeah, obviously we're having conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion in new ways, unfortunately, this past year. When I was in New York in 2014, I helped launch a tech education nonprofit called All-Star Code, which bridges opportunity gaps between young men of color in tech. So we created a pipeline program for high school aged Black and Latino boys to learn entrepreneurship skills, learn about coding, learning about starting their own business. And it's been one of the great wonders of not my career, of my life, to be able to see these men grow and get the opportunities they so richly deserve. And I think in launching that nonprofit, having a lot of conversations around what diversity really means. And I think sometimes we get kind of stuck in visual cues of representation, and there's a lot of invisible cues as well. There are veterans that are often left out of the conversation. There are people with disabilities or invisible illnesses that are left out of the conversation. And so I think there are lots of different ways to ensure that you have a diverse and equitable company of people, but that they all have the opportunity to feel included. I think also I never write stories of people who are me. That sort of bores me. I like none of my films or plays or anything are about like, white queer Jews from San Francisco. Like, so boring. But I can take things from my lived experience and apply it to characters. And also my whole ensemble of characters are never a monoculture either, because they reflect the world that I have lived in, which has always been an eclectic, diverse assortment of people. And so I think what's really valuable, for example, with Strangers on a Beach, when I talked to Jelani Aladdin about playing the role of Calvin, Jelani and I didn't know each other. I reached out to him and I said, I thought of you for this part that I wrote in this film. Could we have coffee? And, talked a lot about how I deliberately wanted a cast of 5 actors, 2 Latino Americans, an Asian American, 1 white guy, and a black guy, and why that sort of ensemble was crafted from the community of South San Francisco in the early 80s, and what that felt like at the time to, go to the beach as sort of a community of color and sort of bypass into predominantly white spaces. And I said to Jelani in our conversation, I'm not going to pretend I know what it's like to walk in this world as a black man. I want to engage with you as my collaborator on these conversations so that you can flesh out this character and make him as real as possible, based on your lived experience, right? So if I don't surround myself with an ensemble of people, not just actors who resemble the characters, but also a team of people, then, I'll just say it always makes the work much better and richer, right? So, and the work aside, it just gives people more opportunities. It's very easy for this industry to default on white males. And I think it's important to go into these processes with intention of how you are not going to fall on that default.
And how do you go about finding these, obviously with the casting, it's a bit different, but with crews and, I think in some ways, and I'll just say this, like not to get into too political, but in some ways I actually kind of agree with the change in circumstance of DEI, because I do believe that, I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I do believe that it was putting people into this like victim mentality where it's like, if I am this race or this identity, I am less powerful than a white man. And because I am less powerful, then I have to work, I get to apply for these kind of grants. I mean, I'll just say, right, I was a National Hispanic Scholar at USC. I came from we didn't have money to put me through USC. So I was actually somebody who benefited from the DEI programs. Mm-hmm. However, there's always that question in the back of your mind that I only get this because I applied as a Hispanic girl. Like, would I have been able to apply if I was, just like you erased my name, erased like, you just saw my like CV, my resume from there. So that's always kind of in the back of your mind. So anyway, I think it's a good conversation to have because I'm not against obviously giving people in disadvantaged places an opportunity, but I do think it went too far, like for too long, was saying that these people weren't capable of doing it like that. I think that's like the undertone, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and look, the pendulum always swings to extremes.
Yeah,
and something I think about relating to what you said is a few years ago, a friend of mine, Marcus, who is a brilliant Black director in New York, said to me he was so tired of being asked to direct August Wilson plays in February.
right.
He was like, I want to direct Mamma Mia.
During Black History Month. Yeah.
And it was Black. He was like, why do I keep getting at it? It was feeling like tokenism,
totally,
and not listening to his unique sensibilities, point of view, aesthetics. He wanted to direct Mamma Mia. Why couldn't he direct Mamma Mia? Why was he only being given opportunities to direct August Wilson plays? And so I think of that story, and it's funny. It's also heartbreaking, and I think it speaks to the swing of the pendulum and how we sort of can't let certain people in our culture sort of bring about a singularity to conversations around DEI. We actually have to broaden the scope rather than narrow it of what diversity, equity, and inclusion actually means.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't, claim to, I think we're much further along than we were in the, 60s or 50s. And I remember in the 90s, even it was like, the reason I never thought I could be a filmmaker was because I never saw a female filmmaker growing up. It was like, so I totally am pro representation. I'm interested in this question, the pendulum right now.
Really?
So I was going to ask you how, like, if you do want this diversity, other than just casting in the actual, actors, how do you find diversity in crews and things like that?
Yeah, totally. I think there's lots of resources. I think first of all, you have to be intentional with it first and foremost. Mm-hmm. And so my wonderful, incredible partner in crime, Neil Usafinia, who's been a producing partner of mine on 3 of my films, is an Iranian-American woman, does a lot of social justice work and activism, and is a brilliant filmmaker herself. And we share that value. And so when she starts to crew up, thankfully she has spent enough time with this commitment that she has a roster of female grips, and she has a roster of people of all different stars and stripes to call on. I think no matter what, it just starts with, it's not that hard to find. Whenever people are like, oh, there's only so many female DP, it's like, shut up. And go find them, and also go find the grip that wants to become a DP. Go find the camera assistant who wants to become a DP, or just hire the female DPs. I think that there is it has to start with the seed, and the seed is intention.
Yeah, totally. And I think people get scared now that after like Me Too movement, and I think it's also created this kind of fear of like, oh, if I hire them, will they then say I'm sexually harassing them? Like I've heard echoes of that as well. But I think the biggest, what I learned, and I talk about this with Laura Beckner, our mutual USC friend, quite a lot, is, we talk about how the guys from USC tended, and I'm not necessarily like including you in this, because I think you tended to swing around to lots of different groups, right? But there were a lot of guys from our class who are classes above and just below, who really stuck together after school, and they ended up creating things together. And as they got more and more successful, they brought more and more people up with them, right? And how Laura and I looked at each other at that time and were like, we tried to be in their group, but they just saw us as like the hookup or the possible girlfriend, or, and then why didn't we as women do that with each other? Like, we weren't like, oh yeah, maybe I should like grab this group of women and like, let's create stuff together. We were relying on the men to do that for us. And they were like, no, basically. So yeah, I think I always think about the best way to do it is to create your own group, to create your own projects, right?
Yeah. Because I felt that way myself. Actually, I would always look at, but that led to create, a challenge is an opportunity. So when I moved to New York and I saw the Northwestern kids banding together and all the CCM kids banding together, and the Michigan kids, and they were creating these things, I was like, where are the USC people? And so it was that frustration and challenge that prompted the Tommy Awards, which was this annual event where we honored prominent USC alumni who had made significant contributions to the culture of New York City. We turned it into a fundraiser. We raised money for financial scholarships, and we gave awards and did entertainment. Had songs written by alumni, performed by alumni.
Wait, did you create that?
Yeah. So
that was your baby.
I brought it to Kate Canova, who was my producer, producing partner on it, and she continued on with it after I left. It had 12 more iterations, something like that. But that was about me exactly having the feeling you just described, which is where are my people? Why are people not bringing me up? Why am I not getting involved with a crew and being like, okay, well, I have some USC friends here in New York. We just moved here. We're all talented in different ways. Let's put on a show. And I think that sort of put on a show mentality, just like you're describing with Laura, it's like, why don't we just like do something together? And you sort of start small, and then it'll get bigger, and then it'll get bigger. And but that my hope is that anyone listening or anyone who's ever experienced that challenge knows that they have the autonomy, no matter the circumstances, to create, which can get into a larger conversation about at what scale, which I think has to do with financials, because a lot of people come into this with a much greater financial base than others. And our industry, unfortunately, doesn't acknowledge that often. That socioeconomic background is never invoked when we talk about diversity, which is really unfortunate.
Totally.
Really unfortunate, because I have had experiences where when I was in New York in my 20s and I'd meet with an agent and they'd say, well, why don't you just put up a show downtown? Like Director X and Director Y, who rented out that theater in the Village. And I'd say to myself, because I would look it up, how much is it to rent that theater for a night? Oh, it's $80,000. I don't have that $80,000. You're
not a trust fund baby.
And here's the thing. It is not a knock on people. I have nothing against anyone who is born or given a privilege of any kind. I think that
but that is the advantage. But you're right. Like, is that advantage sometimes even greater? Like if you're born into a very rich family, no matter what your race or identity, like.
Yeah, of course. You can pay people, you can rent theaters, you can finance a film. But to be clear, I don't have anything against the trust fund person. What I take issue with is the industry or the culture that then expects that to be the norm. that's when we run into the issue. When people are expecting me to be able to finance something or rent a theater or
Not get
had
paid
an
for it.
experience in New York where a very big show that I worked on, and the director didn't pay me for months. And I finally said 3 months after not getting paid, hey, I need to start getting paid. I have rent to pay, and it's due this week. And my superior said, I didn't know that was your situation. And it's always stuck with me for so many reasons.
Wow. What a shameful, I just feel like.
But first of all, even if I was rich, you still got to pay people that you've hired. So it makes no sense in and of itself. But secondly, the expectation that, he's rich, he doesn't need the money, when it was what are you talking about? I'm catering after this so I can pay my rent. That was troublesome. And the story gets grosser in that later that week, my boss took me to an ATM with the group, with our team, took out a wad of cash from the ATM and put it in my hand and said, there, now you've been paid. And it was and this was someone I actually had a great relationship with. I know they liked me. It was so demoralizing and so painful for a really long time. It took me many years to recognize that I did nothing wrong in that situation. I think something in the questions you sort of gave me ahead of time of things we might talk about, you asked about successes and failures. I never think of a particular project as a failure. I think any of the failures I've had in my life have been not speaking up. I think any of the failures I've had have been not in a sort of, calm, respectful way saying, hey, this isn't right. And this is why. And I think I didn't have the resources for many years, an agent, a manager, a lawyer, didn't have people sort of there to protect me or defend me. And it was a really good lesson in contracts and in making sure your voice is heard, especially in times when you're being taken advantage of.
I also think the industry sets you up where we're taught that, you want to, you mentioned people pleasing before, but where your entire goal is to please everybody around you. And again, to remind yourself, oh wait, I have something to offer them. It's not just that I'm thanking them for everything that they do, but I think that that's such a good point. And for other people who are up and coming, because this is a big reason why I wanted to talk to you, and we haven't even touched on it, but because we have so many other things to talk about, but is about, how you have had to create your career. These questions are great. And also there's the reality of, okay, when push comes to shove, you have your rent to pay, and you have to take projects perhaps that don't tick those 4 questions. Right. So talk a bit about the patchwork of your career, because you and I think for 20 years have been talking about the word omnichannel creative, trans-channel creative, or
transmedia,
transmedia creative. And I'm just going to say this because I remember I was living in Chicago, and some guy said to me, I think this is where it started kicking off our conversation, because somebody said to me, I just don't understand you. You write, you're an actress, but you also do social media. You're social media girl. I think you have to pick something. So basically, so I can understand who you are, and
I got that same thing all the time.
Yeah.
Same question.
So tell me about your journey in terms of how, what percentage of it has been this patchwork? How much of it has been through needing to, you've mentioned a number of things in terms of the 24-hour deadline, or tell me a bit about that, and like
Yeah.
what advice you would give other people who are just starting out.
Yeah, well, I think society has changed in this regard a little bit, in that in my 20s and 30s, early 30s, whenever people would ask me that question, what do you mean you write and direct and produce, you make theater, but you also make films? I don't get it. Like, what do you do? Or pick one lane. It was always so funny to me, because to me, it's all the same. I'm a creator and I'm a storyteller, period. So I create projects from scratch and I tell stories through them. And I also choose the medium based on how I think the story will best be told. Some stories are best told first as a comic book. I love my comic book called Eighth Deadly Sin. I hope to turn it into a TV show one day, but for now it's a comic book, because there's dragons and superpowers, and it's much easier and cheaper to start it as a comic. I have a narrative podcast right now that I've been spending the last 5 months on. 6 episodes. It comes out in a few weeks, and that's the best format for that. And then hopefully maybe we'll turn that into a movie or show. Who knows? But what's changed is IP is now king, right? Which was less so the case 20 years ago. So now we're in an industry where a lot of the green lights coming out of the studio system are on projects based on video games and comic books and podcasts. So in a way, it's by necessity to create the IP first, but in tandem, it is also about what medium is best going to serve this story. So to me, it is all the same. And to be honest, since moving back to Los Angeles 3 years ago, I have not received that question. I don't get it. What do you do? I haven't been getting that question in a number of years now. So that tells me that the culture has changed. Also, the creator economy has changed. So many people making their living off of social media or content creation, who are writing, directing, starring in, editing, scoring their own work. We are now much more aware as a culture of people who do wear those many hats. I will say, early in my life, my heroes and inspirations were multi-hyphenates. Mike Nichols was always paramount to me, starting as a comedy act with Elaine May, going into Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and The Graduate, and then directing Spam-A-Lot on Broadway. Sure. Because he had that comedy background, but he was a visionary filmmaker, great with actors, great with writers, and Steve Martin. And so I always had that model, I guess, just like you say with representation. In a way, that sort of representation matters too, seeing people who are writer, director, producers. And it's no surprise that many of my favorite filmmakers and storytellers now, I look at Jordan Peele, similar to Mike Nichols in many ways, starting out in comedy and then going into genre, no big surprise, and now fusing the two, writing, directing, producing, but he's still an actor, right? I do think this sort of relationship between service of story and necessity are inextricably linked. And the example of that is when I first moved to New York, I moved in the summer of 2007. I got into a program called the Lincoln Center Directors Lab, which in many ways changed my life. Worked at Lincoln Center for the summer, booked a Broadway show a couple months later, first Broadway revival of Sunday in the Park with George. And that ended. And then I was like, what do I do now? I need to make money. And so I started catering. And I was a cater waiter for many years in my 20s in New York, while working on a Broadway show or making a movie or doing something else, because I needed something consistent to pay the bills. And the catering I did was absurd. It was Ivanka Trump's wedding. It was George Soros's 80th birthday. I mean, it was the most absurd, gross events. And I was a cater waiter. And I would work a number of galas and award shows. And I could see all these really bored rich people just bored out of their minds at
Too much
these
money.
nonprofit galas saying like, when can I get the hell out of here? And I said to myself one night, I remember where I was on 18th Street, and I was in like, God, these people were like in tuxedos and just like on their phones, not paying attention. And I said, I bet I could like make this better. I bet, knowing what I know from the theater and how to use theatrical storytelling to engage people, make a story interactive, make it feel like an experience. Obviously, the word experiential has become so misused at this point in our culture and in many industries. But back in 2007, it wasn't as prevalent at all. And so that led me to the creation of the Tommy Awards, wanting a sense of community. I bet I could do a gala better. And then after I did that, people started asking me to direct their galas. And so then I did the Pencil Gala, and then I worked on the Tony Awards years later. And I kept getting work being a creative director for award shows and galas because I was bringing my unique point of view, my special theatrical sauce to the occasion. And so
it started from something that came from the inside of you, and then people saw that. That's what's so interesting about it too, I think.
Totally. I mean, it's like when I first got to New York and I said I wanted to be a writer too. And someone said, well, write.
Right.
So start writing, you know? And it's like, no, I'd be a good writer, I swear. And it's like, no, start writing. Yeah. So it's the same thing. It's like, you got to start somewhere. And so that career path of creative direction for events, which has been in tandem to my writing, directing career, came out of necessity. I needed to pay my bills and I didn't want a cater waiter anymore. And I recognize that I have a skill set that can match this industry and stay creative. I did not personally want to work at a desk answering phones and I applied to all those jobs when I first moved to New York as a receptionist. I didn't get any of them. So I was like, well, I might as well build work that is still creative. And directing an award show is theater. It's the exact same skill set, technical skill set, creative skill set, and I'm just getting paid to do it more than I would as a cater waiter. So it started by necessity, and then it sprung out into sort of developing and staying on this train of opportunity that came as a result.
Now, I want to understand, because I think that's great. And you really, I think you really think about marketing as well when you are creating things. Yeah. And in this world, I think the biggest difference from when we were growing up versus now is that now, because of social media, I think, and because of the creator culture, people tend to think about their audience first. Whereas maybe back in the day, it was more, we thought about what we wanted to create from our heart and soul first, and then, thought about the audience. What do you think about social media? I know you're quite active. You use it quite often. I see it as another, for you, it seems like it's another form of storytelling for you, but where does it, at what point do you start thinking about marketing in your creative process? And then how do you think about social media in general? I'm asking a lot of big questions, but
It is. I'll try to remember each one. I am not someone so there are people who write their own personal stories and they turn it into art. And it's a way to exercise demons and make sense of things. I think I'm a more external person in that I make my art to make sense of the world more than to make sense of myself. I go to therapy to make sense of myself. I create art to make sense of the world. And I do care about my audience first and foremost, always. I have the audience in mind when I create my work. How will this jump scare affect them? How will this joke land? So I am an audience-centric creator. Mm-hmm. Marketing. So when I was in high school, my wonderful high school, Redwood, I was part of the drama ensemble. It's called Epic. And we were a theater company, and we weren't just actors in a drama class. The whole foundation of the class that Britt Block and Eric Berkowitz ran was that we're a company, and you're going to figure out how to run a theater company and make work. And so when it came time to the jobs, they said, who wants to be the director of marketing? And I said, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And so at like 14 years old, I was the director of marketing for my high school theater program and made the posters, was the photographer, cut trailers. So back as a young teenager, I was fascinated by marketing. And now, whenever I hear people sort of bemoan marketing or marketing their own films, first of all, yes, it is much easier to market someone else's work. It can be hard to market your own work. But I think it is a creative process just as valuable as the process of creating the product, the film, the play, the book itself. I love hiring photographers to be on-set photographers, to document the process from their artistic vantage point. I love working with a poster designer to create a piece of art that will be our poster design. I love cutting a trailer together.
It shows with all your...
Oh, it's so fun. Like the Strangers on a Beach trailer was inspired by the early 80s erotic thrillers and noirs of Brian De Palma and David Lynch. And I found this brilliant editor, Wilson Cleveland, who specialized in that. And we worked together to make a trailer for Strangers that would have been the trailer should the movie have come out in 1983, right?
Let's watch it. Let's watch it. And then we'll
go back to this.
Let's talk a bit more about it, because
Okay.
it's a perfect tee off. So
yeah, sure.
Here we go.
He thought he was watching them, but he was being watched. She thought he was trespassing, but he was invited. He knew he had gone too far. He couldn't stop. He saw exactly what he wanted him to see. Jelani Aladdin, Zane Phillips, Juliana Aiden Martinez, and Jack Falahy in a film by Michael Schwartz. You're invited to witness a seduction, a mystery, a murder. Strangers on a beach. You can't believe everything you see.
Be careful.
Tell us about that.
I mean, that was so fun. I had wanted to find someone who could specialize in that aesthetic, and then found him on Instagram one day and reached out to him. It's another sort of DM. And I said, I love your work. I just made a film set in 1983, inspired by a lot of the works that seem to inspire you. I want to create a trailer in this style. Could we make one? And he responded and said, great, let's do it.
How did you find him on Instagram?
I had seen other trailers that he had created.
Okay.
Like someone, my friend Michael worked on a film called Hard Eyes that came out earlier this year, and he cut a sort of 80s slasher version of the Hard Eyes trailer. And so Michael had posted that, and I was like, oh my God, I've been looking for this guy for a year. And making that trailer in some ways was more fun than the film. I mean, because it was just like so fun to create that little nugget that this one is deliberately aping Body Double, which is a Brian De Palma film, Melanie Griffith, early 80s. And it's just fun. It's fun to think of all of these opportunities for marketing as extensions of the artistic process and of the world building. I love world building, and that can come in many forms and oftentimes in marketing. So social media is funny for me. I secretly, not so secretly, really despise social media.
Okay.
And think that it is the cause of the fall of democracy in many ways. Now, this is a longer conversation about how, in many ways, Mark Zuckerberg has fundamentally changed so much about the world and our society. I understand that social media has also been used for many wonderful things, for uprisings, for social justice causes, and I am not dismissive of that in any way. I also understand, in a way similar to AI and tech at the beginning of our conversation, that these forms aren't going anywhere, and we can choose to ignore them, or we can choose to harness them for whatever ounce of good we can do. And so I've certainly gone through waves. I mostly use Instagram at this point, even though I'm on other platforms. And I have found it to be a tool to sort of share my story in real time, almost like a documentary style of things I'm feeling or things I'm seeing. I used to be so much more social justice driven with my social media, and I found it to not be conducive to progress or change anymore. It just became who's louder and who thinks they have the facts and truthiness and lies. And, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take my social justice work and just make it all IRL. And I don't need to necessarily publicize the social justice work I do. I can just do it. And a lot of times that sort of work with social media has become, look at me, I'm doing good. I'm doing something about my anxiety with the world, and less about the work itself. And so, I've tried to use social media as a tool for honesty and integrity, a little bit of a sense of humor about it all. And a way to share my work, which I think is probably the most important part of this.
Yeah.
For many years, I did not share my work. Just like for many years, I did not go after, chase an opportunity or message someone. I remember I directed a show at the Old Vic in 2011, made a lot of wonderful British friends at the time. And they were telling me their stories about how they would write letters to directors and producers saying, I'd love to work for you. And that's how they got their jobs. And I'd say, I don't know a single person in the States who's like written a handwritten letter to a producer saying, hi, can I come work for you? It just wasn't sort of in the American way. And certainly was a bit outdated. And then with social media, obviously things evolved, and DMs can sometimes work. And so I think when I would meet people and they would say, oh, I didn't know you wrote films, or I didn't know you made a comic book. And I was like, oh, I got to start letting people, I got to get over myself and the fear that this will feel cringe. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And instead, I had to sort of reframe it for myself and say, Michael, it's not about you. It's not look at me, look at me, look at me. It's look at this thing I created with these collaborators. And do you want to get involved? Do you want to engage with it? Do you want to amplify it? Do you want to ignore it? But if I don't put it out there to begin with, then people won't know it exists. And for better or for worse, social media is now how most people know things exist, especially the friends and colleagues who don't live in LA, who I don't see regularly. So it's a way for my New York friends, my international friends to sort of know what I'm up to. And oftentimes it has led to other work. Oh, hey, I saw you were just doing this film on Instagram. Hey, do you want to come do this film over here, right? So
that's great.
This is all to say I have learned it to harness it for good as best I can, to not get too in my head about it. I think oftentimes people what's really funny about social media to me is how much time people spend perfecting their photo and getting the caption just right and and the habit of consumers is,
Right.
they don't care that you face tuned your face. They don't care about your 8-paragraph caption that they didn't read. You'll get 3 of your people to read it. But the habits are now much quicker, for better and for worse. Anyway, that's all to say, I do believe social media is one of the most powerful tools that an artist can use. And it sort of goes back to the core values we talked about earlier, the questions that I asked myself, the core values that I set at the Lincoln Center Directors Lab. You just have to ask, how do I want to engage with this? How can I make this work for me rather than for how I think people are supposed to use social media?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's how it's supposed to work for you, not how everybody else is doing it. I think that's something that people, it's funny because on the one hand, part of this series is really to help people get ideas on how to like live their creative life, in all of the glory. But it's also to, really inspire them to do it themselves and to do it, how they want to do it. 2 more questions. One quick one is, if Michael could only do one thing for the rest of his life, you had to choose one medium, one type of, director, producer, or writer, or whatever it is, actor, what would it be?
The first answer that comes to mind is one you're not going to like. But your first question is, if I could do one thing for the rest of my life, what would it be? And the first answer that came to mind was listen. If I could do one thing for the rest of my life, it would be to listen. I think that comes from my curiosity. I think insatiable curiosity. I think it comes from the fact that I feel the world doesn't listen to each other anymore. Everyone's just louder and louder. And I love listening. I love listening to music. I love listening to sounds in nature. I love listening to friends. I love listening to artists. So
over creating, you would listen.
Probably not. Yeah. Okay. So creating
I think the thing is, I know about you, Michael, is that you have an impeccable, obviously this interview is about you, but like one of the things, everybody loves about you so much is your ability to listen, is your ability to bring people together. I think about during the pandemic, the
Classic Cinema Club
that you pulled together. I've seen on social media that you've had people at your home reading whole plays. What was it? Yeah.
I mean, I've had film readings and play readings. Annual Hanukkah party.
Hanukkah parties. Like, you just throw the best parties. So I know that about you, but I think the world would definitely be a way worse off place if you were just listening.
If I was just listening. Yeah. Creating. I'll say creating, listening, bringing people together. But we'll say creating.
And in what medium?
That's hard. I've mostly been in film and TV for the last 10 years. And part of me wanting to do Guys and Dolls at USC, the main stage musical this fall, was because it had been too long since I had directed just a stage play musical. And it's my first love. And I think stage directing is what I'm best at, if I'm to be honest with myself, of all my different skill sets of writing and films, all of this, I think stage direction is probably what I'm best at. And so, even though it's dipping my toes back in, if I had to choose one, I'd say putting on a show, directing directing theater.
Yes, we need more of that. And what's the one thing you still haven't figured out about being an artist?
What's the one thing I haven't figured out? I haven't figured out how to turn my brain off, which I'm working on. And I'm building tools to do so. One of the best gifts I ever received, a few years ago, my husband bought me an alarm clock that connects to my cell phone and starts my morning with like nature sounds and a babbling brook rather than a crazy alarm, and a little bit of light that comes up.
Oh, nice.
So it's not a jarring way to start your day, but it's also a way for me to not be looking at my cell phone in bed the half hour before I go to sleep, and was finding that even though the blue light was off and the orange light was on after 10 p.m., it was still impacting my sleep. And we need to turn, just like we need to listen more, we need to like just do nothing again. Fiona Apple has a lyric, Better Than Fine. I think that's When the Pawn album, when she says, if you don't have a point to make, don't sweat it. You'll make a sharp one being so kind. And I'd sure appreciate it. And then later in the song, she says, if you don't have anything to do, go sit on the lawn and do nothing, because it's just what you must do and nobody does it anymore. And I think about that a lot in terms of like, especially these last few months, which have been just 18-hour days, 7 days a week. It's been really, really rough in the trenches. I've had to remind myself, just sit. It doesn't have to be meditation. It doesn't have to be mindfulness. It could be listening. It could be watching the birds fly by. And that relates also to the artistic process. I'll connect it to that, which is at some point you can turn off the critical eye and just enjoy. I think I, understandably as a director, always want to create the best possible thing possible. Best possible thing possible. I want to make sure it's the best that it can be.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that leads to an incessant critical eye, especially of your own work. And sometimes people ask me, do you ever just watch a movie and enjoy it? Or are you always just like, oh, there's a continuity error, or that shot could have been different, or that ADR was flubbed. And it was like, no, it's become a habit. And I wonder if this is true for you as well, of like, yeah, sometimes you deliberately just turn that part of your brain off and you just enjoy it and go on the ride. So that is what I'm working on. I am working on decluttering my brain, both in life, but also in the artistic process.
I love that. There's this like famous quote, and I don't remember if it's Monet or it's one of the great visual artists. And he says, if somebody came by his house and saw him painting, and they said, what are you doing? He said, oh, you're working too hard. He said, no, I'm resting. And then as he was painting, and then they came by later and he was like laying on his hammock, and they're like, oh, look at you resting. And he's like, no, I'm working.
I have to tell people that. I still have to tell my husband that when I'm like walking around the house and it just seems like I'm doing that, it's actually when I'm working. I work most and best in two places: on a walk. I live in Silver Lake. I walk the reservoir. Say hi if you see me. I walk it almost every day. And in the shower. And there's science behind that. It's because a shower relaxes your brain. A walk, the fresh air, relaxes your brain, opens up space for the ideas to flow in. So more often than not, I'm working when I'm on a walk. I'm working through ideas in my head, but it is also pleasurable, right? It is how I relax.
And is there any last thing you want to say to fellow artists who are, struggling right now or thinking about giving up? Is there anything that you would tell them?
Yeah. Two things come to mind. One is there's no such thing as giving up. I often hear people say, oh, I gave up on my career of trying to be a Broadway actor and moved home and started a new journey. It's like, you didn't give up. you just change streams. You put a dam there for a bit and chased another river, another waterfall, to quote TLC, right? So it's like, I don't think there's such a thing as giving up. I think that there's pivots. I think there's forks in the road. I think there's different streams. Don't be so hard on yourself. There's always an opportunity to come back. You have no idea what life has in store for you. And then in terms of just sort of a motto, our shared teacher, Jack Rowe at USC, bringing it back to USC, gave me the Sam Beckett quote, which I think he gave a lot of students, which was fail again, fail better. And, it's a longer quote. Ever tried, ever failed? Never mind, fail again, fail better. I have actually a drawing of Sam Beckett right here on my inspo wall.
Oh, I love that.
Fail again, fail better is so important to me. And it's a axiom that I share all the time, because it is not saying, oh, I've given up or I've failed, right? Sort of taking that negative language out and seeing everything as an opportunity, because everything is an opportunity. So if you think you failed at something, what did you learn? If you feel like you gave up on something, what other door has opened, right? That's like I don't know if that's like positive psychology, or if, I don't know what that is. But I do believe in it.
I think it's resilience.
And boy, do we need a lot of that these days. We
Yeah.
need resilience. And to be resilient, it starts with us, and it starts with how we treat ourselves. We have to treat ourselves kindly. We have to treat ourselves like we're treating our best friend. It's very easy these days to be unkind to ourselves. And we have to not only be kind to ourselves and, of course, each other, but also show grace to ourselves. I'm not a religious person, but I do believe that grace is much needed these days.
I love that. Well, thank you, my dear friend, Michael.
Thank you.
It's been so fun. And
can we stay on for an hour and a half so I can ask you all these questions? I want to turn the tables. I want to hear your
I think
journey.
you've already interviewed me in some other podcast at some point. So no, I love your career. It inspires me all the time. And I hope it inspires other people, because the work that you're putting out, it's like everything I see, it gets better and better, more exciting. You never know what Michael Schwartz is going to produce, and I fucking love it. So thank you for being you. And we can follow you.
Boatashore, BOATASHORE. That's on Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn. I mean, all across the board, Boatashore, which is the name of my production company. If you're like, what does that mean? Boatashore Productions, because Michael, Row Your Boat Ashore was the song my mom sang me to sleep when I was a kid. And to me, the image of us all working together as a company, as a collaborative effort to bring the boat ashore, to bring the project to fruition, that is why I am Boat Ashore.
Oh, I never heard that explanation.
Yeah.
Because you've had that for like over 20 years, right?
Starting senior year at USC, I got the opportunity to direct the independent student production, and the university said you have to have a production company in order to receive the money. And so I was like, I have to create a production company. And so when I was 21 years old, I created Boat Ashore Productions.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And
Thank you,
I was going to say something really funny to end it. And it's fine. I forgot.
Oh, no.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, we look really good for having known each other for like 25 years.
Yeah, we do.
So.
I wish I had your mood lighting. My goodness.
Oh, well, it's dark where I am in France. That's why I have mood lighting. But
you got the nice green light back there.
Oh yeah. That's my fellow artist friend who is also on Whimsy and Grit.
Amazing.
But cool. Love you. I'm going to end.
Love you.